Hey everybody, this is Perch, and there was a little, one of these tweet threads by an artist regarding Action Lab that has picked up some steam. People have been talking about it, and it's curious. It's curious in that it's not particularly a big surprise, but it also it's more detailed than usual. And I think in many ways, if some of these changes are actually ever going to happen, then details like this actually do need to come out. There's a number of curious things. So I want to introduce this to you. So first of all, Action Lab Comics is a company. It's a publisher, small indie. We've shown them on the show before. They in the sense of they put comics out and we talk about them. They're one of those companies that's on the list during the live streams on Friday that we talk about comics. And in fact, the Lovecraft and Tesla comic, Herald, Lovecraft, and Tesla, is actually the title that Tom Rogers is talking about here when he goes through his thread. So basically, in a nutshell, he's talking about kind of what he made on the title and kind of some of the pay and some of the issues with pay with Action Labs. And a number of people have come in to say, I refuse to support Action Labs anymore after this, et cetera, et cetera. What is kind of curious, if in his original tweet, he gets, 164 retweets, 474 likes, 48 quote tweets, as an expose on the industry, as somebody really focusing on pay. That's remarkably low. It's kind of confusingly low. And I say that because, like Alex DeCampi will post something about, people shouldn't, claim to be feminists. If they're writing a feminist book, they should just let the, and she'll get double the attention or more. Tweets about Batman should donate more of his money rather than fighting crime get 20,000 likes and, hundreds of quote tweets, everything. And some of it's people dunking on it for sure, but there's a lot of engagement. I'm a little surprised at the lack of engagement on this one because here's basically what it says. Tom says, for this comic, Lovecraft and Tesla, I have drawn, pencils and inks, a total of 264 interior pages, 15 covers, and colored 7 pages and 1 cover. And it's a big bulk of work. That's more than a lot of people do in a year in comics. He then goes on to say, over the span of its entire publication, I have been paid $4,972.73, under $5,000 for all that art. It's astronomically low. You can't live off that money. Bluntly, it goes back to is comics a side job? Maybe. If you want to average that out, this means I made an average of $17.82 per page, lumping in the covers but not including the color work. How did this happen, you might ask? Well, for the first 3 volumes, we were working on a royalties-only basis. And he says, never doing that again. So for the first 3 freaking books, I made $1,372 for the first 3 books. So if you're counting the pages there, if it's 264, that would be roughly 1,800 or so. Or not 1,800, 180 odd pages, somewhere around there. $1,370 for 180 pages. That, if you're doing the math quickly, that is insane. For the 4th book, after voicing our unhappiness, we were able to finally get page rates with less of the royalty percentage as a trade-off. So basically, by getting some guaranteed money for pages, then they gave up their royalty, or some of it. My page rate was $50 interior page, $75 cover. So I actually made $3,600 on the last volume. I should also mention that all of these pages, so that's okay. Let's pause there for a second. That's low. If there's some creator rates, and we're going to talk more about page rates in a future video, but basically line art mainstream is typically between $200 and $300 a page. And the indie world is somewhere between 100 250 is kind of what crowdsourced have said is typical for art. What's interesting about that, just for comparison, is if you go back to the year 1978, the artwork per page published was, for the Comic Book Creators Guild recommended payment rates for comics was $300 a page. So not only have we not grown since 1978, we've gone backwards. And some of these rates, 200, 300 for mainstream, I know people who are working in mainstream that are making significantly less than that, but for what it's worth. Yikes is the answer. It's the answer there. Yeah, these rates for page that are in the year review. I'll briefly put them up on the screen. Yikes! They're not only is it not growing, it's not entirely accurate. I mean, I know lots of people making less than these rates, but regardless. So that's problem number one, too little money. So Tom continues, I should also mention that all these payments were hugely delayed and communication from my editors was a rarity. For volume 4, I thought I could get paid after completing my work, but I was told I had to wait until the book came out so Action could recoup its cost. This is, I don't want to say common in indies, but it happens more often than you would think. Long story short, for volume 4, I had to wait until January of 2020 to get fully paid for the work I'd completed in August of 2018. So, a year and 5 months. It's not good. Way back in July of 2015. Now, by the way, again, if you're doing the math here, it's worth pointing out that he's talking about over the span of the publication, under $5,000 for the art. That this public, when he says span of the publication, he means 2015, maybe even fewer, because he goes on to say, in 2015, I did see a lawyer to see if there's a way to get out of our contract and get the rights back. So yeah, actually, this is wrong. This has been going on for 8 years, more. Anyway, he talks about, unfortunately, due to the way the contract is worded, a legal battle might be necessary to escape. Usually that's true. Usually the contracts don't have out, so that's not a particular surprise or necessarily nefarious. When contracts are written, they're written with the intent to put structure in place you can't get out of. It's kind of the whole point of the contract. We decided as a team a legal battle would be too costly. Timeline-wise, we should mention that by this point, I'd already completed more than half of Volume 3. So yeah, this is like a 10-year odyssey. I wish he would have put when he started on all this, but it's like under $5,000 for at least 10 years is what I'm reading from this. Why did I keep going for so long despite the paying conditions being so poor? Honestly, probably meeting the readers at Comic-Cons. The readers were so amazing and supportive and always told me how much they loved what we were making, and I love it too. It's also worth noting right here for the moment, it's not like Tom was doing nothing else. He was doing other work. So it's not like we're not nowhere in this where he's saying he lived off $5,000 for 10 years. He had, of course, other income. He's talking about this project, but not that it really changes anything, but just, for what it's worth. He talks about being super privileged to work with the team. He talks about he did a tabletop RPG for Raven Desk that treated us right, paid us well. So what's next for this Herald title? He says, I am not sure, to be honest. We have asked if we could get the rights to our work back, sent in July with no response yet. But as I understand it, even if they agree to give us the rights back, contractually, they have to buy back all the remaining stock. How much is that remaining stock? According to Tom, it would cost $28,000, $28,371, not including diamond shipping. So his guesstimated grand total is $35,000. My feeling is it would be closer to 37, based on what I've seen. But especially with shipping costs in the last year. But anyway, $35,000 is what Tom said. This is not something we're currently prepared to pay for. Yeah, no kidding. And that's if they will let us go. If they don't let us go, we'd have to pay the legal battles plus paying for those copies. And he talks about working a retail day job to get by. We try to make it full for freelancer. He said, before I got married in 2016, I wanted to try and make it as full-time freelancer. So I quit my job at Sears with no real leads. I had a vague plan of I'm going to update my portfolio, reach out to Helioscope, apply for everything I might be qualified for. And he talks about he's done a number of other things, multiple series for Ron Randall and Steve Lieber, mobile game for Glue Mobile, graphic t-shirt designs for University Tees, Briss Lemonade label, etc. Lots of freelance work. So he's grateful for that. He talks about loving comics and everything else. And I'd love to talk to him. He reaches out to Comic Book Yeti. What Comic Book Yeti? Come on, reach out to me. Anyway, it's a good title. I've read this title. It's fun. It has a good cadence to it, and it definitely feels like a passion project. But unfortunately, this story is a common story. It's where you get contractually tied up, so you have very little control over this. He does mention that, due to the contracts, he can't do too much in terms of his Patreon with this stuff. I know that there are contracts out there that restrict original art sales. That if even if the original art is owned by you, you owe them if you sell it. That's been another case, and it's one of this pieces of business. So unpacking all of this, it's hard to even know where to begin. It's too little money for sure. It's one of those cases where you do need a lawyer, and he talks about getting one, but you do definitely need a lawyer to read over these contracts ahead of time. That's very critical. But even if you do get one, many of these companies, if you raise legal troubles, they will just not work with you. They will say, all right, well, this guy's going to be a problem. He's not going to go along with the standard boilerplate. I'm moving on to the next artist down the line. That's happened many times too. So getting a lawyer is important, and you must do it, but it's not a guarantee you're going to come out with a good deal. In many cases, it may just force the situation to walk away from you. In those cases, it's hard to think about it this way, but the best way to think about it is they're doing you a favor by walking away. Anybody who would balk at you bringing a lawyer into the picture to get a fair contract is somebody who's going to screw you down the road, or at least want to have things completely on their terms, and that might not work. But this is a reality of comics. When we talk about some of these things, especially with a lot of the drama that goes on at times, the underlying fact in all this is there's no money. $5,000 for, again, I'm estimating about 10 years. That's insane. And unfortunately, that's a very common occurrence. So interesting food for thought. I'm going to do another video here about page rates and kind of where all that's going, and kind of try and keep pushing on this. There is money out there in comics. There's definitely ways that you can succeed and shine and have a good life. But there's a lot of traps like this one. I am surprised it's not getting more coverage. I'm just surprised, bluntly. I don't quite get that one. But it is, it's important. It's important to note kind of this stuff, because the only way many of these things are going to get better is if there's, more attention put toward it. Anyway, questions below. Let me know your thoughts, and thanks for listening.